Welcome to Podcapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. And this week, bad guys beware. For you, there is no safe Raven. It's like Haven, but shut up. We're talking about Rayven Choi. Cue the music. Hello there, Capers, and as I said, welcome to Podcapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. My name's Scott James Merridew, and this is a show where we talk about various geek and nerd-related topics, and I'm joined each by a very special different guest. All the way from LA, it's Shequeta Smith. How you doing, Shequeta?
I'm great. How are you doing, Scott?
I'm doing very, very well on this lovely Edinburgh evening. This is what I love about living in this part of the world, because in the winter, you wake up, darkness. You go to sleep, darkness. You go to work, darkness. You come home from work, darkness. It's a very thin thread of sunlight during the day. But in the summer, oh my God, it's glorious. All the birds are cheeping, all the stars are swimming. It's lovely.
Nice.
I mean, of course, you live in an day, so it's sunshine all the live long day.
Well, it rained a little yesterday, but it was still warm.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, we had one bad day. Today, the sun's back, so everything's perfect again.
Oh, good. Well, I'm so glad. You can tell I'm British. We started talking about the fucking weather. Jesus. I am such a stereotype. Now, we need to talk about Rayven Choi. And we are going to talk about Rayven Choi. But before we do that, very briefly, we need to talk about you, Shequeta. How are you? How are you doing? Who are you? Where are you in the grand scheme of life?
All right. I am Shequeta Smith. I'm originally from North Carolina, a small town called Salisbury, North Carolina, that's outside of Charlotte. I am a comic book creator. I am a CEO of Shiro Comics, which is a comic book company that focuses on minority women in comics, films, and gaming. Right now, we're here to talk about Rayven Choi, which is my baby. This is my very first comic book that we started back in 2016. It was based on a screenplay that I wrote. So it's a graphic novel series. So there are 5 books. We're down to book 5 right now. So this year will be the year that we complete the book and go to trade paperback. So I'm excited to be here to talk to you.
The saga comes to an end, and I am really, really excited to talk about it. It's going to be an awful lot of fun. But before we do that, we need to talk about the news. The news is weird this week. I mean, these days, it's weird every week, but this week, it's especially weird. Let's get the least weird news out of the way first. This has been in the news for a little while, but it's only just reached my attention, and I am deeply ashamed that it's only just reached my attention. It's been announced they're making a Dungeons & Dragons film. Yes, another one, except this one is probably going to be just as bad as the last one. You remember with Jeremy Irons? No. This one, instead of Jeremy Irons and that one lady from that film, it was also based on a comic, actually, Ghost Town, whatever, I can't remember her name. This one has got Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Justice Smith, and I can never pronounce his name properly. It's stupid French name, Regé-Jean Page. He was the guy from Bridgerton. The really pretty guy from Bridgerton. He's in a Dungeons & Dragons movie. Do you play Dungeons & Dragons, the tabletop role-playing game at all?
Me?
Yes.
No. I have been to the stores and kind of seen them play, but I've never played it myself. But it looks interesting.
It's interesting. Don't ever play it. It's addictive and it's taken over my life. It's a real problem. I need help. So I'm interested to see what this Dungeons & Dragons movie is going to turn out to be like. And I'm very glad that Regé-Jean Page, I will remember his name one day.
I can't pronounce it. I don't know.
It's got the stupid accent over the E. And he's a British actor as well. This is a betrayal. It's a cultural betrayal. But I'm just glad that he's out of Bridgerton. Because Americans, you can't do British period dramas. We can. Let us stay in your lane. Do your own period dramas. Westerns, you're good at it. Just like, you don't see us try and do a Western. Can you imagine a British Western?
That might be a good idea.
I don't see it. I don't see it working.
It'll be different.
Get a couple of British side characters to go all like cockney, like, all right, who's this coming into this here dust bowl? No. Aside from that, stay in lane, let us do the period dramas. And meanwhile, you go off and have a lovely career in a Dungeons & Dragons movie with your fabulous cheekbones, you Mr. Bridgerton. I don't know his character name. So that's the slightly less weird news. On to interesting news. E3 came out, a lot of video game news, a lot of video game announcements. Some highlights include, but are not limited to, Psychonauts 2. I've never played the original Psychonauts, despite all my gaming friends telling me I should. I'm deeply ashamed. I'm sorry. Oh, God. So then we got Breath of the Wild 2. Everyone's excited about that. Oh, God. Then we've got Life is Strange True Colors. Now, as someone who played the original Life is Strange but missed out on the other Life is Stranges, I want to get back on that train because this is a game where you play as this woman in a small town who's got the power of empathy, so she can sense people's feelings, and it's very story-focused and narrative-driven, and it's got what will hopefully be some good representation because the main character is an Asian woman, so that will be very interesting. Hopefully it'll be quite good. Don't know, we'll wait to see when it comes out. Bethesda announced a new trailer for the upcoming RPG Starfield. It's like all their other RPGs, but in space! Can you climb a ladder? Said all the RPG fans. No, said Bethesda. Well, never mind then, said all the RPG fans. That was literally the reaction. They just like, can you climb ladders? No? Fine, forget it. But the biggest and necessarily, well, yes, the weirdest news out of E3 was the announcement of a Guardians of the Galaxy game. That seems pretty, not weird, you might think. It's being developed by Square Enix, who made the Avengers game. Have you played that game?
No.
Good. Don't. It's chock full of microtransactions and virtually unplayable and boring. It's kind of fucking awful. And Square Enix got given the license to make another one, which presumably will not have microtransactions in it. I don't think they'd survive that PR disaster. But my big issue is, it's a Guardians of the Galaxy game. The Guardians of the Galaxy, there's man, there's tree, there's raccoon, there's green lady, there's green man, and there's all sorts of sci-fi happenings going on. But you don't get to play as those characters, you get to play as man. You get to play as metrosexual Chris Pratt, and he just gives orders to the other Guardians, and you sort of control them through him, apparently. And I don't know about you, but if I'm going to play a Guardians of the Galaxy game, I want to play a fucking Guardians of the Galaxy game!
True.
Not Chris Pratt with a quaff game. Because that's all the gameplay trailers showed. They showed a couple of cutscenes and you playing as Star-Lord, and that's cool. I like Star-Lord, but when I have an option between Star-Lord and fucking I Am Groot, I want to play as Groot. Who wouldn't want to play as Groot? He's a tree that talks. He's like the Giving Tree, but more active. Who wouldn't want that? What the fuck, Square Enix? Why do you limit your gameplay? Why? First of all, in the Avengers game, we can only play as one Avenger. We can't switch between them. This coming off the heels of Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3, where you could switch between up to 4 heroes in a selection of nearly 50 heroes, including the Guardians of the Galaxy and the Avengers. It just seems like a bit of a step backwards to me. And no amount of high-depth graphics or intricate story that I probably won't give a fuck about compared to the movies, or indeed the comics, will sway me otherwise. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we must come to the weirdest news story I've ever had to cover. This is... Shequeta, brace yourself.
I'm braced.
So it was recently revealed that during the production of the Harley Quinn cartoon series Season 3, the creators of the show wanted a scene where Batman was, fighting my British repression here, performing a sexual act upon Catwoman of the cunnilingus variety.
Oh, yeah, I heard about this.
My.
And the DC executives, fight it, Scott, fight it, told them no because, quote, heroes don't do that. Now, there are, the phrase like, there are two wolves fighting in you. Well, there are three, not wolves, let's say terriers fighting inside me. One is my demisexuality, one is my English repression, and one is my sex positivity. And none of them are winning. Because, oh God, this whole thing, it's so stupid. And it's gotten such a huge reaction.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, to the point where there is a petition on change.org titled, I'm so sorry, let the bat eat the cat.
Gross.
It's marketing genius. That's marketing genius.
Yeah. And so far, it has gotten, at time of recording, 864 signatures. I mean, props to those people. That's great. I mean, because I agree with them. I agree. Because there are plenty of sex acts depicted in DC medium in general, let alone the show Harley Quinn. But apparently, DC executives balk at the idea of just one particular sex act between a man and a woman, and it's rampantly sexist and makes me really pity that DC executive's wife. Heroes don't do that. That's so stupid. I mean, dare I ask, what do you make of this?
I think it's stupid. I think it's really stupid.
The whole thing is really stupid.
Yeah, the whole thing is really stupid, and I don't know. Execs, I work in Hollywood, so it's just like they have a lot of ideas, a lot of notes, a lot of things that they say that they want you to do, and they're not always good. And I don't really think. It feels like sometimes at DC, the execs don't appreciate the fans or don't listen to the fans and what they want. I think Marvel does a better job at it, but yeah, I think they're going to have
almost to the point of going in the other extreme. We still remember those designs for the New Warriors. But
yeah, so I don't know. We'll see what happens, how it all works out, and how this petition shakes out. I'm interested to see it.
It's stupid, and I hate the fact that this is what humanity has come to, the point where millions of years of evolution, countless generations of history and culture all interwoven in an inexplicable tapestry of a single species, leading to two fictional characters not being allowed to perform one particular sex act that people have been doing for fucking millennia. It's stupid. Moving on. Oh God, I want to talk about something different. Unfortunately, however, what we've got to do instead is have an ad. Check it out.
And now we're pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
Oh no, it's still in my head. God, Shequeta, take it out. Talk to me about Rayven Choi.
I can't help you, man. Or Rayven. We don't have those problems over here. Rayven Choi. Rayven Choi is a story that I came up with after I went to Korea back in 2000. I believe I was in college. I went to Korea on a study abroad trip. I was supposed to be study abroad trip, but it ended up being with a religious cult, and I didn't realize that until I got there. So when I came back to America, that's a whole nother book.
So Scott, how did you see your day turning out? Well,
so I came back and I had the people in Korea treated me so kind, and it was just like, what if a black woman is adopted into Korea, has to go to Korea and grow up? And so that idea was in the back of my head. And then I started reading all these books on bounty hunting at the time for whatever reason. I told my uncle we should be bounty hunters. I don't know why that was my career choice after college. But he was like,
I mean,
no.
In this economy, that's a valid choice.
Yeah, now it would be probably to go beat people up. But I was just
lightly
like
tased.
Yeah, lightly tased. Nothing too extreme. But my uncle was like, I can't be a bounty hunter. I have a job. And so I was just like, okay. So maybe I could just write this as a script or whatever. So Rayven Choi was the second screenplay I ever wrote. And I I moved out to LA to pursue screenwriting, and it always got me meetings, but it never got made or anything. And so
Hmm.
in about 2008, I saw Iron Man, and for whatever reason, I knew exactly what Marvel was about to do next. I just knew this was coming, the whole world, the universe.
You saw what the rest of us didn't.
I saw like that their vision. I saw that in my vision. I was like, okay, like maybe I should, create some intellectual properties. This was like in 2009 or 2008, whenever Iron Man came out. And so I thought about Rayven Choi. I was like, this is a type of story that would work as a graphic novel. So I went to
So,
comic
so,
shops.
so
Okay.
you saw the whole franchise boom thing coming
Yeah,
before anyone else. You got on the ground floor.
I saw that was coming. I just knew that was going to happen next.
Hmm.
And I was just like, I want to be a part of this. I'd always had interest in comics, but I never thought, to do it. So I went to look at comic shops to find other books that were similar to what I may be doing. And I was like, hey, show me a book with a black woman on the cover. And he was like, and I was like,
Damn it! Where's that
so
back issue of Why the Last Man?
yeah, well, he found like Misty Knight. He showed me
Aye.
Heroes for Hire. He showed me Black Panther, which is not a black woman, but okay. And then he showed
Not
me
yet,
what else?
anyway.
I know, yeah, not yet, not yet. That isn't yet, yeah. And so that was pretty much all he can like give me. And I'm just like, our Storm, like a part of X Men. I was like, okay, is there any lead black women? And he was like, nah. So I was like, okay, there's a market for this. And so
Oh
I
yeah.
knew that and knew that I had the script, and it was just like I went off and procrastinated for like 6 years, and I was shooting short films and working a day job or whatever. And so by the time I got to the third short film, I was a finalist in Project Greenlight with Matt Damon and Ben Affleck for one of my movies, one of my short films. And I was just like, okay, I think it's time to get an IP on my hands. I think it's time to make Rayven Choi into a graphic novel. So 2014, we started working on the book in secret. I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want anybody's opinions. And in 2016, we released the first book. We shot a short film for it, and then I released at the wrap party for the short film. I was like, okay, the book comes out next week. So I did a Beyonce drop.
Oh.
So the story is about a girl. She's 5 years old. A hitman kills her parents right in front of her. They send her off to Korea as witness protection, where she ends up getting adopted by her father's Katusa. I think that's how you pronounce it. Where he was stationed over there, and he had a Korean man that was assigned to him. So she ends up getting adopted by him, spending 20 years in Korea. She finds a tape confession that her dad left in her Teddy Ruxpin. So I'm into toys. So in the back of the a tape was a confession her dad makes about North Korea. So she comes back to America to find the killer, and in the process, she becomes a bounty hunter and kind of joins this group of guys, and they help her solve the case. So right now we're on book 5. So this is where she confronts the hitman, and it all gets popping.
Oh
So that's what
God.
we're working on right now.
So I don't want to go too heavy into spoilers. It's a great overview, and obviously we'll go
Yeah.
deeper into it as we go. But I want to start back at the beginning.
hmm
So your time in Korea. You
hmm
mentioned a cult. Let's
Yeah.
explore that. Let's explore that,
Oh,
shall
you,
we?
you want to know about that? Really? That's the most. Okay. So I was in
You
college.
mentioned a religious cult. You think I'm not gonna want to talk
I
about that?
I just didn't know if that would be interesting. But I it was between my junior and senior year. I went to NC State in North Carolina, so I'm the Wolfpack. Shout
Hmm.
out to Jimmy B. And so I was like, I saw in the newspaper there was an ad for like a study abroad trip, and it was the Unification Church, and I was just like, and they were like scholarships you kind of go for free. I'm like, oh wow, I always wanted to go to Japan, but Korea would be cool. So I was just like, cool. So I signed up for it, and these people were kind of weird. It was kind of like you kind of meet those people that like the elevator doesn't go all the way up in their head. It was kind
Oh
of like
yeah.
those that they were kind of brainwashed. It seemed to me, and I was just like, oh, but they're paying for half of it, and I only have to pay this much, and I get to go out of the country. Kind of ignore the red flags, even though I shouldn't have. And so it was me, and there were different college students from different schools. So there was a couple from NC State, a couple from Chapel Hill, and people from like some of the other big schools, Wake Forest or whatever. So we all went on this trip. So we get on the plane and head on over to Korea, and we get there, and they take us out in the middle of nowhere. We're staying at these like traditional cabins, or I don't even know what it was. It was a resort. It was like I think it's called Bear Mountain Resort or something like that. And we had to sleep on the floor. So it was like traditional. I'm just like, what is this? So then they take us the next day to their building or whatever it was. And we're riding in the middle of like the woods or somewhere, like in the middle of nowhere. It's like streets or whatever, but it's like the country land of Korea we're riding through.
Ah.
And all of a sudden, this big, huge building shows up. And I'm just like, yo, this is a fucking cult. And they're like, no, this ain't a cult. This ain't a cult. And I'm just like, this is a cult. There's
Cult is a very strong word.
yeah, but I'm like, this big beautiful building comes out of nowhere. We're in the middle of like the woods, driving through this road that's something from like a horror movie, and this building just shows up. Like, yeah, there's something ain't right. And so we get inside or whatever, and they're talking about love, and we have breakouts or whatever, and then like Reverend Sun Young Moon is there, and there's all these political people that are there, I guess, because this cult is really rich, and so they're talking to us about love, and then we go downstairs to like their cafe or cafeteria, and they have like the same trays that they have in jail, like the metal ones. And I'm like, I'm not eating or drinking anything here. And so, yeah, I was like, I think the only time I ate, like the next day they wanted us to go back to the cult place, and I was just like, I'm not going back to that place, y'all. And I was like, so we pretended to be sick. It was like me and maybe like six other people pretended to be sick, and so we were the rebels. So we took a taxi cab to the bus stop, took a bus stop to the subway, and took a subway into Seoul. That's how far out we were.
Oh
And we
wow.
went to Seoul and went shopping. And one of the girls, her boyfriend was stationed over there, so he took us around. And then one of the guys that was with us, his parents were in the cult, but he spoke Korean. He was a Korean guy, so he translated for us. So we went around and had a whole adventure in Korea and met all these people. And I had a robe made, like a. It was like a day of fun, and then we had to get back before they got back, and so they came back or whatever, and then like the next day they took us shopping again, and I met this guy, and he was telling me how he was trying to infiltrate the cult. Um, I don't know if it was his brother or he was a part of an organization or whatever, and so he was just telling us what was happening in the cult and just kind of how they would switch your if you have a baby or whatever, they could switch your babies with another family. I mean, the main thing about this cult specifically was like they had a really big wedding. They had like a wedding at the same time where all these people got married at the same exact time. So they're known the Moonies. They're known as the Moonies, and so
Oh, I think I've heard of them. I
you
swear I've heard that
probably
phrase.
yeah, they were the flower people back in like the 80s. They used to sell flowers in the airport or something like that. And so, yeah, the
Ah.
mass wedding. So he was just telling us all this stuff that was happening. And I was just like, really, dude? And so, like, we're getting the hell out of here. And so, our trip, it was only like for like a week or so, is what our trip was for. So, we made it back. And when I came back with having that experience, it like changed my life. Like I knew I wanted to be a writer. I'd already kind of been like inching towards that anyway, but I knew for sure exactly what I wanted to do with my life, which was to be a storyteller. So a couple years after college, I moved to California to pursue writing, and that's what I've been doing ever since. So
Dear
yeah,
God.
There's more.
No.
I mean, there's nothing like a really weird, fucked up experience to make you want to be a storyteller.
yeah.
That's
That's what happened, I guess. I mean, it was like, and still, I haven't told that story yet. Like
no.
that's an idea that
I
I
was going to
have.
ask how much of that is represented in the Rayven Choi comics, but I mean
Um,
that's
Not much. It's like just the whole idea of like, what if a black woman's adopted? That's kind of what was
Hmm.
interjected, and just kind of the scenes and the things that I saw when I was there. So like Bukchon, Hanak Village, that's in the book. That was one of the places that we went to tour when I was there. So it was just like just the scenery and like the cicadas, just kind of hearing them, and just like a lot of that got put into the story, like the original Raven Choi that I wrote. So it was kind of like Korea was like a character for me to kind of
ah.
come back with. So it was like my first time leaving the country, my first time going anywhere like that. So it was just like they say, like when you go other places, it just kind of heightens your senses, and it kind of just gives you a different thought process. And so that's what that trip was like for me when I came
Yeah.
back. So yeah,
It's that element of culture shock. I mean, for me,
yeah,
it's never been particularly dramatic because I have been to America, but all the
mhm,
other places I've been to have been Europe. I've been,
mhm,
far afield, so as far as Croatia and Greece and places like that, where the
mhm,
architecture and the culture is very different from the UK. But at the
mhm,
same time, you still got that same sort of like, okay, I've got touchstones here. I got things that I
yeah,
recognize and things that I can like latch onto.
mhm,
When you're that far afield, what do you latch onto?
yeah.
It's
I was just yeah, it was just like I latched. I mean, of course, like as I told you, I was into Japan. I was into like martial arts and whatever growing up
mm,
still. So it was just like I was kind of in the place where it's just like, okay, this is like everything that I've imagined or whatever. Because I always wanted to go to Japan, but it was like Korea was still like in that same realm. So it was like even being close to Japan and being close to China, it was just like, okay, this is really cool. Then we went to like the DMZ, like and saw where like North Korea, South Korea
Ooh,
split. So that was
the
really like
bad
interesting.
place.
Like, yeah, if you go over there, they'll shoot you. I was like, really? I was
We
like,
won't
it's
go
like
over there then.
this is like 20, 21 years old. I'm like, oh my gosh, really?
Yeah.
So everything was so new. And like, I've been back to Korea. I went back in 2018 for their Comic Con, the Comic Con Seoul. And so it
Ah,
was really cool to kind of take the books back there and the story back there. Like we sold out actually a couple times. We went to the Comic Con and we went to the military base that's over there, Camp Humphreys. They invited me to come over.
yeah,
So
because you've
yeah,
been going all over the world doing these things
yeah.
called Shiro talks.
Yes. I do Shiro talks when I go places, and I've been doing international comic cons just to kind of see people's reactions to Rayven Choi. So Shiro talks is when I go to talk to kids usually
Hmm.
about comics or just about just life. I mean, they have questions. Some of them are artists. So I went to Indonesia. I did 2 Shiro talks over there. In Korea, I didn't really do an official Shiro talk, but kids kind of follow me. So there were kids in the subway. They come like, "Hey, who are you?" They wanted to know who I was, and so it just had a conversation. So sometimes it's not an official Shiro talk, but it still is. So it's like I get to talk to kids about comics and about, just different cultures and letting them see my culture because a lot of kids, especially in Asia, they haven't seen black people. So that
Yeah.
was one of the things when I first went to Korea was like the kids in the subway were like looking at me like, and like one I think was like touching my arm to see like if my blackness was gonna rub off. So that's actually in Raven Choi, I think chapter 2. I actually put that on. They're in the subway, and the little boy touches her arm, and she's like, "Oh, it doesn't rub off."
Because I mean, I know there's this thing in some Asian countries where dark skin is viewed as this very not alien thing, but it's very weird
Hmm.
thing. Because I know there's this horrible thing over there. It's like this
Colorism.
skin bleaching, colorism. Yeah, there it
Yeah,
is. Skin bleaching treatment and all that sort of stuff. So
yeah,
it's good that you're out there being a positive influence. I'll say that much.
yes, yes. And I didn't mind. I mean, I know that there's like a level of ignorance in some ways, but it's just like I
We're all
didn't
ignorant.
mind. Yeah, that is true. But especially in America over here, we got some ignorance going on in a major way. But that's neither here
I
nor
see you're America and I raise you one British Empire, please.
exactly. Yeah, y'all. I don't know. We're in like a competition, and like, especially with this pandemic, of
Who's the
people are
most
crazy.
racist out of two?
Yes, the
Honestly, I
racist,
mean,
most craziest.
kids, you're both completely bigoted. This, oh,
Yeah.
God, I can't. This is one thing to talk about. Now, this is a serious topic, and I want to get your opinion on
Mhm,
this. And we don't have to talk about it, but um, because we're talking about this now, and we're going to be talking about representation, talking about
mhm.
these things and racism, I want to talk about this thing that's been very popular in the American news right now, and it's something
Okay.
I wish was popular in the UK news. This
Mhm.
idea about this backlash against being taught in schools critical race theory.
Oh yeah. So I mean, it's just like okay, like there's this thing that they say like as long as the is it the hunter that has the gun, the lion never gets to tell his story. So
Hmm.
it's just like for so long, and I mean, since the beginning of time or the beginning of when I went to school, it's like the history books don't necessarily have the true story of what happened with slavery in America and all that. They kind of cut a lot of things out, so the kids don't get to learn that. I didn't get a chance to do African American history until I got to college, and then even then, I had to fight because when I got to my senior year, they didn't want to count my African American history class as American history. I had to have American history to graduate, so I had to go to the chancellor and have her count African. I was like, African American history is American history. We built
It's
this
right there in
country.
the name.
Yes.
Jesus.
Yes. And so I had to fight to get that to count for me to graduate from college. I'm like, y'all don't want these problems. So it's kind of the same thing that's happening over here with that, where they don't want to teach racism or like or the real history because I think they feel like people are going to turn on them. It's the powers that be. I think they
Yeah.
feel like people
Yeah.
are going to get educated. It's kind of like the same reason they don't want you to know about voting rights and they don't want you to be able to vote because if you do, you can vote assholes like Trump out and with no problem because he wants to keep you dumb. He don't want you to be smart. They don't want you to be smart about racism and all of that. They want to keep you stupid and want to make it a divisive thing where it's like white kids can't really learn about what happened with black kids or whatever, but they can still like black kids can still experience racism. So that's kind of been the whole thing where it's just like, yeah, you don't want white kids to learn about racism or whatever because they'll probably become our allies, but you
Yeah.
still displaying all this racism against black kids or whatever. So we see it in the news every freaking day. So it's hopefully it's going to get taken care of. Hopefully this fight is going to turn big enough to where they have to teach it. It's
Yeah,
like it's not going to be
because
an
I mean,
issue.
as a white man, I still feel cheated that I did not.
Hmm.
I know the US and the UK education system are very different.
Right.
UK still shit, but anyway, I still feel cheated that I never got taught about the stuff, and I did get taught about some things. Like I got taught about anti-Semitism and the
Hmm.
Holocaust,
Right.
and that was great, and I learned a lot. I
Yep.
did not get taught about the LGBTQIA plus society. I
Right.
did not get taught about race relations, race theory, and things like that. And I could have
Hmm.
benefited so much, and I had to learn the hard way, either
Hmm.
incidentally or by
Yep.
people calling me out of my own ignorance, which I'm so glad they did. I'm so glad
Hmm.
friends of mine took the time to say, "Okay, here's how things are."
Right.
And which was not their responsibility to do. It was adults' responsibility when I was a child.
Yeah.
And they failed me. And they are still failing kids.
Hmm.
And things are getting better, but I'm sick of incrementally, progressing. So
Hmm.
imagine how other people might think.
Yeah.
So it's important. It's important for everyone to have a clear view of history because
Yes.
it's history. And if we don't see where we've come from, aren't going to have a clear picture of where we're going.
Exactly. And
It's
that's why I do what I do. That's
hmm.
why I'm a filmmaker. That's why I write movies. That's why I write comics. And the comics, in a lot of ways, is a way for me to kind of get out my ideas organically and authentically, to where I don't have the studio heads trying to tell me what to write in this comic book or whatever. Because one of the comics that we're going to write next year is like an Afrofuturistic type of Terminator type of
Ooh.
story. Like I have an alien that I created, and there's like this guy who's like he's a part of the alien race, but only half alien, half human or whatever. So it's called Girl X, and it's just like, so with that, I'm going to do it as a comic first because I want to be able to kind of incorporate the nuances of racism and just kind of this dystopian world, like what happens after you don't have critical racism, and there's a whole nother alien race of species that comes down to America and addresses all of it for you. That everybody's a minority now. So it's
Oh
like
yeah.
I want to be able to do that story and tell that story without having to go to like a publisher or go to Hollywood execs and just write it as a movie. Like I want to get my thoughts out, my ideas out, and to teach. That's really what, like, for me as a creator, that's what I want to do, is like I can incorporate little messages and stuff in the things that I write and things that I create. And so that's where I come in. And a lot of us creators, we have that ability to do that. I'm not sure everybody does that, especially with the
Well,
whole
there are so
drama that
many
happens.
movies now
Yeah.
that are good movies. Many of them are very good
Yeah.
movies, but they're what I like to call very special movies. They
Hmm.
come, they go, they're there to teach some people a lesson,
Yeah.
and then they're designed almost to be forgotten.
Yeah.
And it's not that they're bad stories, it's not that they're stories that don't deserve to be told,
Hmm.
but there are so many stories that are being told that have been pushed by the wayside that
Right.
feature people of color in important or indeed lead roles,
Hmm.
where their race is there and it's present, but it's incidental and that's not the focus of the story. But
Right.
those movies aren't being given the same kind of spotlight. For
Hmm.
every Selma, great movie, deserved to be told, there's
Hmm.
100 stories where we're featuring either predominantly, black or people of color cast
Hmm.
that are just not given the same level of attention, and it's
Right.
insane. Whereas we
Yeah.
give the same kind of stories, like romantic comedies or
Hmm.
dramas or actions or things like that, plenty of attention as long as
Hmm.
it's got white leads. It's
Yeah.
it's frustrating and it's
It is,
stupid,
and
and
I'm
it's
in the
down to
middle
people
of
like you
it. Yeah.
giving us proper representation. Which I think, because
Hmm.
okay, let me put it this way: aside from my demisexuality and the fact that I'm from the UK,
Hmm.
my cup runneth over with representation.
Yeah.
Cis white heterosexual man,
Hmm.
I'm good. I'm
Yeah.
done. I don't need any more.
Yeah.
And I and it's so important, especially for kids. I've talked about this so much,
Hmm.
especially for kids, to see at least part of themselves on the screen
Right.
or on the page, even
Yeah.
because
And that's the thing. It's just like, and that's what I met with a production company earlier this week, and so I was talking to the producer about that. It was just like, I can do, with my company, Shiro Comics, focusing on minority women in films, comics, and gaming. I can do 100 movies the next 50 years and still won't catch up to what's been done for white men
Yeah.
over the past however many years that movies have been in play. It's just like, so I don't feel any kind of way about just focusing on this niche market because I think it's huge. I think, especially after going around the world with my book or whatever, it's just like there's women are being ignored in a lot of ways, especially in Hollywood, and it's just like, okay, y'all can continue to ignore them, but I won't because they're a very good demographic, very loyal demographic, and they're
Almost
looking.
50% of the population,
Yeah,
perhaps.
you think? And so, and they're looking for stories that to resonate with them or whatever. And so, I mean, even like white women will come and buy my book, and white women come and watch my movies or whatever. So it's just like they want to see diversity too or whatever in the thing. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, I
It's
don't understand it.
humanity. Let's
Yeah.
tell human stories about humanity.
Yeah, but they don't even want to teach you critical race theory in high school. So it's just like it's a uphill battle. So it's like we're fighting that battle and one step at a time. So I'm trying to do my part, and I hope that my coworkers and my the other people that are in the industry, other creators, co-creators, are doing the same. That's what their goal is. But for me, that feels like it's my purpose and my mission is to do this. So yeah,
Yeah.
they're not going to stand in my way.
It's a big, bright, beautiful world we live in, and I want to see as much of it as possible. Because
Hmm.
again, from my education, huge swaths of it just left out,
Yeah,
and it's again the feeling is cheated. I
yeah,
feel cheated. I feel
yeah.
cheated. Can you imagine? So
Hmm.
it's so very important. That's why I'm so glad he did something called Shiro Comics.
Hmm.
Side note: it took me way too long to realize. Oh my god, it's Hero and she together. Too long,
Yes.
too long.
There's a funny story about that. So, do you know who Marv Wolfman is?
Oh god, yeah.
Okay. So me and Marv, we'll go way back. Not really, but one time I did a Comic Con and he was the table next to me. They put me next to Marv, and so the whole time we were there, I was like, I'm over looking at his stuff and asking about questions about Blade and the Teen Titans and stuff, or whatever. And the guys
When
were
did he
walking
stop
by.
speaking jive? What happened with that?
I don't know, but I'm just asking questions about just like the creative process and just kind of his story. I'm always interested in older people and hearing how they came about to do things and just kind of how they progressed over the years. So it was really fun to watch him and to kind of see him make all the big bucks. Cause those guys over there like in tears getting autographs from him. That's how much they love him. I'm like, I'm trying to get on his level. And so he would come over to my table, come in like, let's take I have like a pink carpet. I always had this at all my Comic Cons. So people can take pictures of me on the step and repeat Shiro comics and the pink carpet. So okay, Marv, let's take a picture. So he comes over and he looks back at like the step and repeat and he's just like, Shiro comics. That is so genius. Like, why didn't I think of that? And I'm just like, I don't know, Marv, but the URL was available, and, and I bought it. I'm just like, let me have something. Like you guys thought of all this other stuff, but it was just like I don't think, and even in this industry, I don't think that a lot of women are the top priority. It's like you kind of get put as a sidekick or whatever, but I
Well,
don't
the
think they've ever
priority
been
for certain kinds of stories.
right.
You know, the ones that are cooked up by, middle-aged white men in
Yeah.
boardrooms.
Yes, pretty much. And so that's very telling and it just kind of that's what my documentary is about. Like we're doing a documentary, The Shiro Universe, that just talks about black women's role in comics over the years and just kind of um how we can move forward to have some more agency in the thing and telling our own stories because for so long, I mean Shuri, all these characters, I don't think Shuri was created by a white man, but I know like Storm and I know that Misty Knight and a lot of the others, even like Nubia, were.
Vixen,
And
Bumblebee, I
Vixen,
believe.
Bumblebee,
Um, See, this is the part of the problem. See,
Sing
I'm
Astonished.
struggling to think off the top of my head.
Exactly,
Like,
exactly.
I can do it. Rocket. Like, I love Rocket, but
Yeah,
this is part of the problem.
yeah.
It's,
So
it's
that's
not.
the
It's not my fault. It's the lack of representation.
But
I've
that's
been
the thing.
list
I
of
don't think they think of women. I don't think, and not even just white men. I think like other men too. They don't think of women first. They're thinking of themselves first, and how because a lot of times when you're writing a comic book, you may put yourself in the story. A lot of
Hmm.
people do comic books based off of their own personalities or whatever. So if men are running the industry, then that's what you're going to see most of. And they may add a woman in there as a sidekick,
I
and
know
she's
Mark
dressed
Miller certainly is
half-assed.
doing that. Ugh.
Really? But yeah, I'm just like, so okay, so where's the female voice is always what I was like. So it's just like, yes, Shiro has to come through here and add to that and my little part, but there are other women too that are doing things too. But it's just like it's overdue. It's long overdue. It's not enough of us. There needs to be more of us. Little girls need to get into this. This is something that I mean, they little girls are into it. That's one thing I figured out.
Oh
There are
God, yeah.
women that are into it, but they don't have the representation. They don't see themselves. They don't have the stories that are told by us from our perspective, and it's very different being a woman. I'm just like, it just is what it is. There's things that happen to us, and there's things in life that shape us. And sometimes only a woman's able to tell that story and to relate to that and get to the person's heart and mind is what we say at Coca-Cola when I used to work there. You're trying to get into their space, their mental space, and make them feel your product. And so, yeah, I think.
That's the thing. I've always gravitated towards that sort of thing. I've never been
Mhm.
afraid, growing up and even as an adult, of
Yeah,
engaging in things that were targeted towards women, considered
yeah.
with a female demographic. But there was always a little part of me is just like, you should be ashamed. You should be ashamed. Shut up, toxic masculinity. I can like what I like. If I want to read Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane, I will fucking want that. If I want to watch My Little Pony, I will. Well, I won't be weird about it, but I'll watch it.
Yes. There's a whole My Little Pony fan club actually. I was watching I think the Toys That Made Us on Netflix,
Oh yeah,
and they talked about like there's a whole like guy movement of like their
the
My Little Ponies.
bronies.
Yeah, the ponies. So I'm just like, and I get a lot of men too that buy my books. I get a lot of men, even with like the short films that I've done. Some of them have been. I wrote one called The Takeover, which is about race, where a black woman and a white woman who best friends swap places, they swap bodies for a day or whatever, see
Oh,
what dating is like. And she's a comic book artist or
Freaky
whatever.
Friday,
So
but
it
dramatic.
is. It's not dramatic. It's actually funny. It's a fun
Okay.
story. I'm an agent of fun, and so, but with that one, it was like you can see the demographics of who's watching, and it was mostly men. It's like I was making a chick flick, but a lot of guys love that story. So it's just like I
Because we
think
like a
men have
different perspective. We
well,
like
y'all love
seeing
women.
the world through a different lens.
Yeah, yeah, that, and I think y'all love women too. And it's just like, but I think a lot of the men who create comics or who've created comics over the years don't realize that men like women too, not just as objects, but they want to get into our minds to kind of see how we think. I mean, good men especially, smart men. If you want to learn about women, you want to read about what we're doing and read about how we think or whatever. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it's interesting, definitely.
absolutely. I mean, because it's important to get those different perspectives out there. And is
Yeah.
that part of the reason why you? I don't want to say go to a lot, but you definitely have interacted with a few military personnel and been to military bases talking about this
Mm.
sort of thing.
Well, yeah, the book Rayven Choi, the story. Her dad's in the army,
Hmm.
and so that's the thing. He was stationed in Korea, and like he was a military intelligence. So it deals like she's an army brat. So I'm like, I thought, let me go to army bases and kind of take this story over there and see what the reaction is. And so they invited me to several. Like I went to one base, and they started inviting me to other ones. And so, yeah, it was really great. I mean, I don't know if you saw the trailer for the Shiro universe, but like,
I
yeah, the
did, yeah.
guys were like kind of camped out there waiting for me. So it's like that felt good to kind of have them there, kind of waiting to see Raven to buy Raven Choi. And so yeah, it's been a great. That's why I know that men want to know our stories too, because they were the main ones buying the books. There were some women that came too, but it was a lot more men. So it was just like I'm excited that they're interested in what I'm doing and are supporting it.
That sort of thing always fascinates me because I'm a second generation military brat. I'm what we
Hmm.
would call over here a scaly brat because my my mum and my dad were both in the Royal Air Force.
Okay.
My great uncle was in the Air Force, and his brother, my grandfather, was also in the Air Force. My
Hmm.
grandmother was in the then Women's Navy.
Okay.
So, and tons of other family friends, big part of our family,
Hmm.
and obviously Air Force, Army, quite different. But
Hmm.
it always was fascinates me that sort of culture and that sort of dynamic
Yeah.
with fiction, how it's portrayed, and what people like. And I see, um, in when I've peeked my head around the corner, had a look that American military personnel are much more receptive to these kinds of stories, especially in this kind of
Mm.
medium, comics. I mean, the biggest thing that I can think of was that, and apparently this is quite true to life, the film by Clint Eastwood about that sniper whose name sadly I cannot recall.
American
Um,
Sniper?
American Sniper, or was it? Was it
Is
American
that what
Sniper? It was
it's
definitely a
called?
military film where all the soldiers when they're out on deployment, out in the field in
Hmm.
Iraq and Afghanistan, were really into Punisher comics and things like that.
Oh.
To the point where they even had like decals on the Humvees of like the Punisher
Hmm.
skull and stuff. And this sort of stuff resonates with military personnel, and it's just.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not military. I grew up in the life, but
Hmm.
I mean, let me put it this way. My mum, when she was a kid, she grew up in places like Singapore and Canada,
Mm.
and I think Germany at one point, whereas I grew up in just England and Scotland,
Okay.
all over the place until I was 11. So I've always felt like I've had my foot in that world.
Hmm.
I would never claim to have my entire body in it, but it's fascinating to see military personnel sort of resonate with these kinds of stories in this kind of
Hmm.
medium. Because, I mean, do you find it's very different how they approach things versus how civilians approach it?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of military, I feel like they're badass. I feel like there are heroes, the real heroes. That's what I would tell them when I would
Hmm.
be on the military base. Like, you guys are the heroes. That's why we write about you. So you'll see in a lot of the comics or whatever, a lot of military is involved, like an Iron Man, the whole military backdrop or whatever. Like, there's a lot of that that's put into comics and to stories. Some of the biggest stories of the of movies or whatever that are out there have something that goes back to the Pentagon or something that goes back to an espionage or something with the
One
government.
man swore to take them all down.
Exactly.
Like that
And
sort of
so
thing.
I think that the comic world kind of boosts them because they're out there in the middle of nowhere, but you can have a comic book and you can escape. And that's what I think is missing from films today. And so I'm in all these meetings with all these producers and production companies or whatever, because of course I write movies. And that's what I'm telling them. It's like, we don't want to see any more sad movies. I mean, there's the Marvel and the DC and stuff, whatever. That's great, but we want to see
DC is
some.
pretty sad these days, let's be honest.
I'm no comment. I plead the fifth, but
Fair enough.
but I'm just like, we wanna escape. So it's like that's the whole
Yeah.
thing about like the black movies that are like they're calling them trauma porn because they're showing black people getting either beaten from slavery or either like in the main world they're getting beaten by the cops or whatever. And it's just like, yeah, those stories need to be told, but they shouldn't be the only stories told because when I go to
We
the
need
movies,
Afrofuturism. We need
exactly, and that's
Afrofantasy.
what I'm
We
working
need,
on. Yeah,
yeah.
we want to escape. So it's like this story. Actually, the story I'm telling you about, like Girl X, is like, I, Girl X is my license plate on my car, and it has been since like 2014. I knew there was a story that was coming behind it. I didn't know what it was. So when the pandemic hit, it was like, of course, the first month everybody was scared shitless, like, what the hell's going on? But by the time April hit, is when like all my creativity started coming to me. So I started having dreams about this other world, about these aliens, about this Afrofuturist society. So it's just like I wanted to go somewhere else. So like that's how I go places, is writing my story. So like I think the first month I wanted to go to Korea, so I wrote a K-pop story, like a 20-page treatment for a K-pop story that's from Rayven Choi. Rayven Choi's best friend is a K-pop star accidentally. So I wrote her story. So it's like this
As you do.
this
That happens.
yeah, so like this Afrofuturism story is like a getaway. It's an escape for me to write that. So I'm just like, people want to go to the movies and escape their problems. I want to go for 2 hours and not think about I have rent to pay next week or whatever, or think about Trump or anything he said over the past
You
how
know
many
what we
ever
want?
years.
You know what we want?
Upgrades, people, upgrades.
That's what we need.
Yes. So yeah, I'm
Uh,
like that's what I'm out here trying to do in the film world and the comic book world, is to provide an escape for people. So that's why I think the military is really in the comics and the comic book movies and stuff, because it provides an escape for them. And a lot of times they're involved in the escape. They can see themselves. They have representation.
yeah, because the military is not one homogenous thing. It
Right.
comprises many different kinds of people from many different walks of
Yep.
life, doing many different kinds of jobs.
Yes.
All my family have many different kinds of jobs in the military. It's not one great big thing.
Mhm.
It's not a monolith. It's diverse.
It
And
is.
should be represented as such. Now, you've been talking about your films, and I want to talk about that in particular one film, the short film about Rayven Choi.
Right.
I loved it. It's about 15 minutes.
Mhm.
And it's really, really cool. Do you know what it reminded me of? It gave me real Cobra Kai vibes. I
Oh,
don't know if you've been
nice.
watching that show. It wasn't so much because it's got martial arts in it, although that did help.
Yeah.
It was sort of the cinematography,
Mhm.
the way the camera moves and the way the characters act and move and everything. It feels... It's got that kind of vibe, but I really like that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm hoping to get that into a feature film. That's always been the goal with this. But my agent and manager, or my managers, look like I'll do a TV pilot for it. So I wrote a TV pilot, which was hard as hell. And then right now it's at Sundance, so I guess the hard work paid off. It's a finalist at Sundance, the TV spec for it, pilot for it. But
Oh, fantastic.
yeah, I was shooting that. Like my DP is really great, and we work really well together. So it was just like I wanted to just do an introduction to the book. I wanted to do it where it was kind of it was pieced together, not necessarily a complete narrative, where it was just kind of going in and out of her world. And the dojo scene, the dojang scene that we shot was just amazing to shoot. And it was so sad because like none of the people could be around because we had to go around in circles. So like that whole scene, they're fighting, and me and the DP and me the DP and the assistant camera are like together
You
like
did the
this.
crab walk.
Yeah, we're like crab walking with each other. We're running around them trying to capture them. So I'm like, none of that's on camera. No pictures of that because everybody had to be behind, like in the back room in the dojang because they couldn't, or they'd be in the shot. So like, it was just
I've
amazing to
done
kind of
that
watch
in like
that.
a field with like huge grass, trying to
Mhm.
not to trip over rocks outside.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
No, I mean, it was fun for us because we were inside and we were running around in our socks because you can't wear
Yeah.
shoes in there. So it was fun to kind of like just kind of band together and like create that scene. So when I go back and watch it, and people are just like, the camera's moving the whole time. It's like, yeah, that's how I wanted it to be. Where it's just like
It makes it
I wanna look.
dynamic. It makes
Mhm.
it energized.
Yeah, I wanted to give it an energy because, like, I mean, this whole thing is kind of like Bruce Lee's on my wall. Like, I'm a huge
Oh.
fan of Bruce Lee. I'm a huge fan of Jet Li.
The dragon.
I have Muhammad Ali on my wall. I'm a huge fan of fighters, I think. And so,
Yeah.
um,
Well, it's not just fighters. I think it's more this a case of warriors because there's
Mhm.
fighters and then there's
that is
warriors.
true. Yep.
And what's great about it is you really get this sense of like, oh, this woman's a warrior,
Yeah.
but it's juxtaposed both, in a cinematic way and also in a narrative way with these moments of vulnerability when she's in therapy,
Yeah.
and the camera's very still and
Yeah.
static, and she's just talking and
hmm
expressing, and that I found very fascinating.
Yeah, I'm interested for you guys to see the last book. Like, I just went back and like the script was all the scripts were written, but I went back and rewrote that one and it has a new ending than it was before. So I think it's
Mhm.
gonna surprise you guys. But then it kind of really showcases like her where she's at mentally. Because I mean, something like that, you never forget those things that happen to you like that when you're a kid. Like it's just like trauma events. So it's just like that sticks with you, and then it's just like her whole family was like gone from that. So it's just like I wanted to kind of
In front of her.
yeah, in front of her. So I wanted to delve into the therapy thing and just kind of how you go there, breakthroughs that happen. So in this one, there's
See,
like,
Batman, that's how you do it. You go to therapy.
yeah, that's one thing I want to encourage people to because I do. I go to therapy every other week or whatever. So, and it helps.
I
mean,
need therapy. I need to go.
deal with this world, to deal with all the things that go on. It's like you need another person to talk to, especially as being a CEO and being like I don't imagine how anybody that's really in a high performing career or a really stressful type of career can go without therapy, at least for however long. I think a lot of people will go crazy if they don't. So you have to have that other person there to kind of the third party to kind of to talk to get feedback from, and to like just read you sometimes. So like on Monday, my therapist read me. It was a breakthrough for me and whatever. Just like because I wasn't asking the questions that needed the answers. So like my agent would send me something. You have a meeting with such and such, and I'll be like, oh, they had thoughts on the script, and I wouldn't go ask what are the thoughts. And if you don't ask what are the thoughts, and you start making up stories in your head, because I'm a storyteller, so I'm thinking like, oh, they're going to tell me something stupid. It's going to be like the DC execs that are saying you can't lick the cat or whatever it was. And so,
Awful choice of words. Possibly the worst choice of words. You could have said anything. You could have said anything, and you chose that. Dear God.
but those are the things you make up in your head. You're not sure what's going to happen. And so I asked them, I went back and asked, okay, what were her thoughts? And they emailed them to me. And it was just really questions that she had about my script, because the script that's out right now is like a big Jumanji type of movie that takes
Ooh.
place in Native American mythology. It's called The Legend of
Fantastic.
Cahokia. And so, yeah, so it's been getting a lot of traction. It's been getting some really big names that have been looking at it. And so, yeah, I was going into this meeting, but I want to know what the thoughts are before I get there. But I would never really ask that question because I don't know. It was a weak spot or whatever. But my doctor pointed it out, and I was just like, I need to ask the question. And so I did. And the meeting went amazing after that, because I went into it with knowing what her thoughts were, answering her questions, and kind of prepared for it. So yeah, therapy I advise everybody to go. especially if you're
I
in this
mean,
type of
I'm
career.
again English, so my first thought is stiff upper lip, don't show emotion,
Yep.
just keep on going, keep calm and carry on. Drink tea, drink tea,
That's
drink all
over
the
here
tea.
too.
That'll wash away the pain.
See, we don't drink tea, but we eat. I think is what it is. We have like that's our
Ah,
thing. And so, but people don't want to go to therapy. People don't want to address their issues. People don't want to be honest. I think with themselves, and this is
no.
why I feel like the pandemic. I've been saying this like this past week. A lot of the crazy stuff you're seeing that's happening right now, like the people trying to open doors on airplanes and just like, I mean,
Oh,
it's
I
all
saw
kinds
that. That
of
was so fucking
yeah, it's
bizarre.
all kind of violent stuff and just bizarre stuff that's happening. And I'm like, I really feel that during the pandemic and the lockdown, it like unlocked a lot of people's mental illness. And so now we're
Because human
dealing
beings
with
are
it.
social animals.
Yes.
We rely. I mean, some people are less social than others,
Hmm.
and I'll gotta be honest. The first like half of lockdown, I was just like, I could stay like this.
Yeah.
Less so as it went on. I mean, this is. I mean, that's the thing. I think I've been talking about this on the show before. It's in isolation that we discover the true nature of humanity as
Yeah.
well, and it might not necessarily be a good thing. I mean, because that's how I discovered I was demisexual. When I just had zero human contact, and I could just all I had to do was analyze my own internal feelings, and
Right.
I realized, oh, okay then, great. I figured that out at fucking 28.
Well, at least you figured it
Jeez.
out. That's the thing.
Yeah,
That's
some
half
people
the
don't figure it out
problem.
until they're 68. So,
Exactly, or maybe never. So they die with
yeah.
that. So it's like, yeah. So I think that unlocked a lot of mental illness, and so what we're seeing is the the backside of that. We're seeing that it come out or whatever right now. Now that we're kind of being released back into the wild, and so it's wild out here. We got to see like
Wild is right.
a dystopian society. What happens in real life when it happens, and that's what we're seeing with this shit. Because
I
it's
read this
scary.
story about this guy who, from pretty much from day one of lockdown, had been working from home
Mhm.
and then had to go back into the office. And
Oh,
when he
really?
came back home to his, I think it was his wife, he just broke down and started crying because he had to go back into the office environment
Yeah.
after just being kind of free and working from home, working in
Mhm.
parks, and just
Yep.
like humanity's been on this singular course
Yeah.
for the most part of the 20th century. And now we have a chance to break several
Yeah.
bad habits
Yep.
in many different aspects of our society. Let's seize that chance and don't let go, and let's be free.
That was the most amazing part of the pandemic. Like for me, when I was in corporate America, I always worked jobs where I was in the field or I worked from home. So I knew that that's what I needed in order to survive corporate America. Because when you're in an office with other people all the time, it's mundane. You know, people's personalities. Some people probably smell their feet or some shit. It's just like, yeah, I don't have time
Mm.
for that in my life. So I'm able to escape and kind of I would go visit customers and I come home and do my work or whatever. And I'm very disciplined, so I can do that. But I was so glad that I mean, during the pandemic, people got a chance to feel what that was like. People that had to drive, like take, especially in LA, traffic's horrible. So having to like drive an hour and a half to get to work each way, it's like they didn't have to do that anymore. So I think people feel freer. And now that it's like you're trying to get them coming back kicking and screaming, like they didn't try to go back to that life. That was a horrible life. They didn't know it was horrible because they were in it. But being able to take a break from that horrible situation of having to drive 2 hours to work back and forth, they're like, I don't want to do this shit.
It's Plato's allegory of the cave on a societal level.
Yeah.
It's this is a turning point. Jesus Christ. And it helps when you're exposed to new ways of thinking,
Right.
new ideas.
Mhm.
This is why your work is so important.
Yeah.
Because in many ways, it's a story that we've seen before because it's as a woman who goes through trauma and I don't want to dilute or simplify it or put it in a box, but it is a story about revenge. Would you say that's
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah, it is definitely.
Okay. And but it's done through the lens of representation, characters that we haven't maybe seen. This interesting cultural cross section.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of stories we need. And on the subject of revenge, because like the revenge stories kind of fascinate me
Mhm.
in a sort of morbid way. Just like it's like looking at an insect through a microscope. Just like I am repulsed, but I am intrigued because it's such an unhealthy part of humanity, and yet such an intrinsic part of humanity.
Yeah.
History is stained with the blood of revenge.
It is. I mean, that's when you look back over history, like especially with me, like I wrote a script a couple of years ago about an African tribe or whatever, and I did a lot of research on tribalism and kind of looking back and seeing just kind of how the reactions that the tribes would have against other tribes, and just like the infighting and the war. And the same thing with my Native American script too. It's like the tribalism and just the fighting, and how a lot of tribes ended because another tribe came in and took over or fought them or whatever. It's just like warriors. Like war has been happening since the beginning of time. I don't know why we can't get along on this planet. So it's just like
It's conflict.
yeah,
It's part of the. It's like a social Darwinist would say that it's part of our necessary for our survival, and it's
hmm
how we grow as a species. I don't entirely believe that. I think it's just like people want things, other people don't want those things,
right,
and they can't think of any way but fisticuffs.
yep,
And I mean, but there are other ways. There are. I mean, so this is the thing that I've been. I'm not a religious man,
hmm
and haven't been since I was about 14.
okay,
But if there was one religion that I have become not enamored of, but intrigued by, it's the Taoist philosophies
hmm
and this idea of what's it called, like movement without energy, energy without force, just like going with the flow.
right,
Almost, I'm simplifying a lot, but it's things like that that really, really inspire me in a way
hmm
because conflict sometimes is necessary and sometimes conflict can be good for growth.
right,
Most of the time it's not. Sometimes you just need to go with the flow and just deal with things in a healthy way. And this is why, going back to the whole idea of the revenge story,
hmm
at what point do you let it go? At what point does it become a defining part of you? At what point do you take the revenge as a concept and using it for good? Again, going back to Batman,
hmm
he is taking revenge out of every single criminal so that no kid has to go through what he went
right.
through. That's what it's supposed to be, at least. Most of the time, it's kind of dark and gritty and just like, ooh, gross. No, bats, no. Take a shower, get a shave, and just stop being gross. And so, I mean, was that something that was at the forefront of your mind when you're writing this comic?
I don't think so. Like, I think when I first wrote this script, I'm not sure it was a revenge story. It was just kind of like a coming of age type of, she's coming of
Ah,
age and she's grown up in this other culture. She's kind of like leaving the parents, like her parents, like Korean parents, like her dad's kind of strict on her. You'll see that in like the first chapter. And so she's just trying to find herself in a lot of ways. And this case and her finding the confession of her dad kind of gives her a way out of her her parents' house, whatever, to kind of go and be a grown up or whatever. It's kind of a coming of age thing. But as the story kind of goes on, and as I've done the comics or whatever, it was just like, okay, I want to create a little bit more conflict. This guy, just kind of just addressing the feelings, and especially with me being in therapy too, it's just kind of like that kind of helps the story too. Just kind of the feeling the emotions or whatever, what she feels, and like how would you feel if this happened to you or whatever, or some people this has happened to or whatever.
empathetic
Adoption,
sincerity.
yeah, yeah, and then like the whole adoption thing or whatever, how those kids feel, especially with interracial adoptions or whatever. So it's kind of like looking at some of that. So like this last book, like I said, I changed the ending. Like it was going to end a certain way. I can't really tell you how it was going to end before, but I changed that a little bit up because a lot of people really dug the revenge aspect of it all. So it's like it's not going to end the way you probably think it's going to end, because the beginning starts with the ending where it shows her like with the gun to the head of the hitman or whatever, and so we see the gun shoot or whatever. So you think that's going to happen, but when we go on the other side of things, that's not really what happens. But she still is able to leave the situation feeling some kind of closeness, like of closure or whatever,
Absolutely.
and still maintain her dignity and still maintain her being the protagonist in the story or whatever. So I did it a different way. I wanted to do like the old school, like someone said something about in the movie, like the old school, her mom running down the train kind of in slow motion is kind of the old school thing. I'm like, that's kind of what I want to get back to. Is like even in this fifth book, it's like there's a whole shootout in like this whole wooded area. They have to hike to get to this guy's house or whatever because he's in the middle of the woods. So it's like there's a whole shootout in the woods, and there's there's glasses that like the glasses you can see body heat or whatever, like those types of things that they're using in military stuff. So I wanted to incorporate that into the story because I like to do things old school. I like the old shootouts that they used to have in movies. That's like what we're kind of doing in chapter 5 at Raven Choi, and kind of how the story kind of ends in that manner. I don't know,
Yeah, you'll never get me, Magnum. Oh yes, I
maybe
will.
maybe I'm a purist. I like I like the old
It
school,
worked.
simple stuff. Yeah, it worked. And so it's like now they try to do all this stuff. And I mean, some of it works, but it's just like, why not just kind of do it the old school way where you kind of get that feeling afterwards? You feel like you escaped, you saw something, you feel good about it. So yeah, that's kind of what we have going on here with the fifth and final book of Raven Choi. So I'm excited to get it to you guys.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sure it's going to be great. I mean, I'm going to get a sense of that this whole thing is built around a foundation of catharsis. Am I right in that?
Yeah, that is right. That it is about catharsis and about um, healing yourself, getting over the traumas from before, or working towards healing those traumas. So that's what the story is about her. And I think a lot of people kind of relate to that because you have childhood traumas that still come with you as an adult. So it's like if you can
Yeah.
get closure on those, then you should definitely try to do that. So that's what the story of Raven Choi is about. It's just kind of her healing those childhood traumas um and being able to be a hopefully a an adult that doesn't carry that weight with her anymore. And that's kind of what she tells her dad throughout the story. Is just like, I'm tired of running away. I'm tired of being his victim, because the whole time after that happens, when he doesn't, like, the hitman doesn't kill her. She's the only one that he misses on the hit, because she runs into the bathroom and locks the door. So it's just like, you're still a victim of him because he's in your dreams. Your family's gone. So this person still has like he still has a hold over you your whole life. So
Our
this is like
abusers don't
her.
really go away as long as we remember them and the
Right.
scars they leave.
Yeah. And so her scars are very obvious when she wakes up every day in a different country, than what she
Hmm.
would be in if she was still with her family, her biological family. So, yeah, I wanted to kind of address that. I mean, that's this type of story. I mean, the revenge thing, it stands out to some people. That's what it is. But for me, it's more of a heartfelt story, of more of her just
The
kind of
revenge is
finding her way.
incidental. It's not the
Revenge is
focus.
incidental. That is right. Revenge is incidental, but for me, it's more about her coming of age and her able to shake this hold that this victimization, being a victim. She doesn't want to be a victim anymore, and so that's why I think, like in martial arts, that's what it's about. Like, how to fight in a certain way. That's why I wanted to add that into the story, because one, because I love it, and I'm a big fan of Bruce Lee, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
But two, because it's just like, it's a way of knowing how to protect yourself, but you don't have to go out looking for fights. Like, you don't have to showcase how big and bad you are. But if somebody fucks with you, all right, you're gonna get these
I know more
hands.
fucks to give, the more fucks I tried to get. I'm over my fuck budget, and I'm now in fucking debt.
See, yeah, it's like, yeah, you're gonna get these hands, and I know how to use them. So
Yeah.
that's what it's about. Is just her being
Have you
able
been
to get her
watching
freedom.
this? Have you been watching this show that's recently out of the CW? It's a remake of the classic kung fu show called Kung
Yeah,
Fu.
yeah.
Thoughts?
I've only seen maybe 2 episodes.
I've seen
From
one.
what I understand, it doesn't follow the old Kung Fu show. It's just kind of like
No, I
in
mean I
title
was really
only.
excited because at first I thought it was going to be a western, but with a female
Mhm.
martial artist, and I thought
Yeah,
that sounds great. That sounds
yeah.
awesome. Let's flip it up and maybe cast an actual Asian person. Like, I love you, Carradine, but no, you're not fooling anyone. But no, it's set in modern day times. Okay, well, she'll still be called Kane, right? No.
hmm
Oh, and now there's a magic sword. Okay, yeah, sure. This is
Yeah, the magic element. I was just kind of like, okay, are they going to go with this the whole way, and how far are they going to go with this? So it seems like they're kind of dipping back and forth between using the magic and then kind of staying in reality. But yeah, I've only seen 2 episodes of it, so I don't really have an opinion on it. I mean, it
I
kept my
mean, I had an
attention, I
opinion on the
guess.
first 10 minutes because, like, it starts off good. Like, she goes to this monastery and starts learning martial arts and stuff,
hmm
and it's very CW-ish. But you know what?
Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine. And then, like, 15 minutes later, they kick her. Well, no, not even 15 minutes. Like 10 minutes. They get it over with as soon as they can. And it's just like, let's get out. Let's get you back to the real world so we can include pop songs. It's I'm very much unenamored with the CW. I miss Gilmore Girls. Not that kind of Gilmore Girls. The other kind of Gilmore Girls. Old school Gilmore Girls. Good Gilmore Girls. Anyway, that's
Yeah,
just...
CW is interesting. It's like, the only thing I really watch on there, I don't really watch it really, like, I don't really watch a lot of television. I don't have cable anymore. I haven't had cable for like 5 or 6 years. So I
Steal
had
it.
I have basic TV, and then I have a couple. I have like Netflix, Disney,
Yeah.
HBO Max, and that's about as all I'm gonna go with. But So sometimes after the news goes off, that comes on the kung fu show or the Flash will come on. My TV will be on CW somehow, and so I'll catch it. Like it'll be playing in the background. I'm usually writing something, and I'll kind of watch or whatever. So the Flash was interesting to me, so I watch that sometimes. But it's not like it's appointment television. Like I have to watch it, but I'll check it out if it's on.
I mean, fucking speaking of representation, when are we going to get a live action Barry Allen that is actually blonde? This is just... Oh, forget the racism, forget black women being represented in a media. This is the highest form of injustice.
Very.
Maybe I'm just a little bit nitpicky, who knows? Now, speaking of visual aesthetics, I want to talk about the art style for Rayven Choi. It's an art style. I'm not pretending like I know a ton about art styles, but I know what I like. And this art style it's very unique. It's not something I've really seen before.
Right.
I'm thinking you're the artist on it, right?
I'm not the artist.
No, sorry. Sorry.
I draw very bad stick figures.
You do so much else with it.
Yes.
I immediately thought, like, wait, she's not the artist, is she? No, she's not.
No, I
Ask.
hire people.
Ask and show your unprofessionalism.
I hire people. So like, but the art style was a choice of mine. Like I'm a writer, so it was just like I wanted the art to be kind of like realistic, but more so plain, because I wanted you guys to read the story. And I
think naturalistic is the way I would describe it.
Yeah,
which is better than being realistic. Because I've seen art styles that try to be realistic. More often than not, they're based on a live action medium already. I've seen a few Doctor Who and like Torchwood comics that try and just have an art style where the characters are just like exactly as they are in real life, and it's fucking creepy. And thankfully, this is not the case here. If it's naturalistic, it feels like it's very grounded in a real world sort of thing. Like, we don't think a kaiju is going to come running out of the woods at any point. That's not going to happen.
And that's what I wanted to do with the story. I wanted to kind of keep things simple, because this is my first comic book. Like I told you, I'd never done a comic book before. I mean, I read plenty of them, and there was all kinds of different art styles. I went to Comic Cons and kind of saw different types of art, and different creators, how they create or whatever. But it was just like, I knew I wanted to keep it simplistic. I knew my artist that I had been working with for like 10 years, like we worked together on t-shirts. I was doing t-shirts. And I knew he was really good with faces. And so I'm just like, okay. So so the art, he's done he did the first 2 books. The third book was all over the place because I had like 3 different guys drawing from me, because he was trying to quickly do it. And so she looks a little bit different in some places for me, but I'm just like, we got it done.
That happens. It's comics. It's fine. As long as there's a narrative continuity, we can live with it.
Yeah, and so in book 4, the artist that kind of helped out with book 3, he did most of book 4, and then my guy who did book 1 kind of came in and helps. Dennis comes in and helps sometimes. So, and then Quasran, who's doing book 5 too with Dennis, he did Squad Goals, which is my cheerleading book. So he did we did the whole look of kind of like a Barbie / DC girls type of thing with that, which I thought was really cute and really they look adorable to me. But he can change his art style up. That's what I like about this guy. Like, he's really, really good. He can do that simplistic type of thing, but he can go and do like some serious Marvel. And I think he has done stuff for Marvel before, so he's very versatile. So I like that about him, because the Girl X, the Afrofuturistic story, we did concept art for that, so we have character design or whatever done, and that's different than what he's done in other books. So it's just like probably none of the books are going to look the same as far as outside of Rayven Choi. The other books that we do, there's different art styles that I kind of want to flow with. I'll go looking for okay, I like the way this looks or whatever for this character. So for me, it's as a filmmaker, it's kind of like you go casting or whatever for actors or whatever. You kind of find what works for this story, what character you see in your head or whatever. So same thing with my artists. I'll have them do sketches for me, okay, that works or whatever. But yeah, it's been good. Some people love the art, some people don't. I'm like, that's gonna happen. That's how it is, and everyone is, and it's just like it comes with the territory. I mean, I used to work for Coca-Cola. Some people like Coke Zero, some people don't. But enough people like it enough so it can keep going. Exactly, or that. So it's like,
what is Coke? What the fuck is Coke? It's like it's like vegetable matter. Like, what the fuck is it? Like Fanta, orange. Okay, I have a baseline. Yes. I mean, although I am a hypocrite, because over here in Scotland we have this soft drink called Iron Brew. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I don't think I've heard of that.
Iron Brew is the most fucking magical, delicious elixir on the planet. And Americans that I've known over here who have tried it said it tastes like bubblegum. It does not fucking taste like bubblegum. It tastes like fucking iron brew. It's amazing.
Bubblegum. Oh gosh. I don't
No.
drink soda. I wouldn't know.
Fair enough. It's probably better for you.
You know, Homer, it's very easy to criticize.
Fun, too.
Anyway. God, it's impossible to tell. You know, we have no foundation in this podcast at all. We just go for it's a ping pong ball of a podcast. We go from ding, 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 just all the fucking time. So, what I want to know is, where can people find Rayven Choi, Shequeta?
Okay, so it's on my website. My website is shirocomics.com, which is hero with an S on the front. We're in the middle of a crowdfunding campaign. I think we have like 17 days left. It's on iFundWomen, which is a platform to help women raise money for their companies. So the URL for that is a bit.ly, so bit.ly /backslash iFund Shiros. You can go and you can buy Rayven Choi Chapter 5. You can buy the variant cover, Chapter 5. We have Rayven Choi Funko Pops made, which have been really cool. I'm about to mail some actually right now once we finish this podcast. We have a whole shebang, which has all of my books. So Rayven Choi is in English and it's in Korean. So you can get all of the English and Korean books. I have Squad Goals, which is my cheerleading story, my one-shot. And then the story I was telling you about, the Native American movie script that's been going around, I have a prequel book that I wrote, is a Zero comic, to introduce the movie, and so that's a part of that package as well. So if you go to shirocomics.com, you'll see the video of me talking about our crowdfunding campaign. We're only like $1,000 away from funding, and we still have 17 days left. So looking forward to getting more people in on that. But yeah, you can find us on shirocomics.com. All the movies on there, the short trailers that we shot are on there, so you can kind of see what the characters are like. You can look inside of the book and kind of see what the artwork looks like we were talking about. And then you can send me messages. We also have ShiroCon. I'm not sure if we didn't talk about that, which is my comic convention that I do.
How do we not talk about that?
I don't know. But like after I did the International Comic Con circuit, I came back and I was trying to put together just like a little, get some creators and kind of go into a comic shop and sell some books on Women's History Month. It was like I was going to have maybe 5 girls come with me. And I called them all to see if they were doing anything that year. It was 2019. And they were like, no, we're not doing anything for Women's History Month, but we like that idea. I was just like, oh, okay. They're like, can you do that? And I was just like, oh, okay. And so I thought it was going to be... I thought it was going to be like a rummage sale type of thing where, we set up in the middle of the mall and like put our books up and people kind of walk by. That was kind of what my vision was. But the mall just kept pushing me to go bigger and bigger. And they were just like, you want a stage? I was like, a stage? What would I want a stage for? We're not doing a straight up comic con.
Stage.
We just need tables and like tablecloths and me and my girl selling a couple of books. What are you talking about? And so they kept pushing me to like make it bigger. And next thing I know, like I have the girl Janisha from Black Panther. She's one of the Dora Milaje. She came, and then I had a lady that she's Lolita. She's a composer for Batman. For the comic, for the animated series. So she's won Emmy. So she came and spoke about, doing music composing. And I had like 25 girls and an artist, a Shiro Alley, and then 4,000 people showed up. And I planned this Comic Con in a month because I was just like, I'm trying to do some tables in a comic shop. And then the mall was like, well, we want this event. And so I ended up having an event.
I'm sorry. Did you accidentally create a comic convention?
I accidentally created a comic convention. My intern had talked about, you're going to have a Shiro Con. We're going to have a Shiro comic convention. I was like, yeah, maybe like 4 or 5 years down the line. And I guess like the universe was like, no, right now. And so, yeah, that kind of fell into my lap.
Time's a wasting. You got shit to do.
It was the most stressful thing ever to like pull that. Like the first year, you don't know any better. So you just like jump in and you kind of make it happen. The second year, I knew better. And I'm just like, this shit is crazy. And so this year it ended up getting postponed because like we were going to do it virtual. And I feel like people are kind of zoomed out for one thing. But then like one of the actresses that was supposed to come, like she kind of canceled on me like the week before. And I was just like, you know what? Instead of trying to go find some people to replace this, like I'm just going to, postpone it to a later date, especially because it was in the middle of pilot season or whatever. So I'm just like, we can do that either later this summer or we can wait until next year and we hopefully can do it in person again because there's no energy like a Comic Con being in person.
No.
It's just you can't mimic that. You hug people, you touch people, they buy stuff from you, they are nice.
They're
Some
sweaty.
kids, they're sweaty, they're moist. Some kid knocked down my step and repeat last year and broke every damn thing, and we didn't
Oh,
have a step and repeat. So it's just like stuff like that happens. All the great,
yeah.
the great crazy stuff happens
It's
at Comic
humanity coming
Cons.
together with a single purpose to geek out
Yes.
over stuff.
Pretty much. And so like we had the Ghostbusters there last year. So yeah, it's just like
Holy
I want to
shit.
go back to where we can get that, and have that energy, because there's nothing like it. And I hosted, I'm like the host and the person that interviews all the talent that comes, and we've had women that work in like for Warner Brothers on character design. I've had stunt women that come through. So it's like, for me, it's like teaching the younger generation about different jobs that they may not have known existed, which is comics, being a stunt woman, being an actress, being behind the scenes with the composing. So showing them different avenues in the entertainment world that they could actually be a part of. So that was the main draw for it. And so women are so enamored with
Because
it.
we're
That, like,
not
they're
going to get
kids.
proper representation on the screen until we can get representation behind the screen as well.
Right, right. And so yeah, and so I I guess this is some visionary type of stuff, because it's just like for 4,000 people to show up, and it was just simply like I put it on Eventbrite. It was just like free Comic Con. It was a 1 day micro pop up Comic Con that we were having.
You
And so
had
for
me
that
at
many
3.
yeah, and so for those people it was in the middle of the mall. Like we were the first. We made history because we were the first Comic Con to take place inside of a Westfield mall. So we took in the middle of
Okay.
the mall. We set everything up. There was a stage and speakers and all kinds of stuff. So it was just like pretty extravagant for the planet in a month. But it was like we had a built-in audience, but there were people that came specifically for the con, and so that was really really cool to kind of see that. So that's why when people, like, a lot of people want to judge you by like your social media followers or whatever, it's just like, oh, you only have like 1,500 followers, so maybe you're not that popular. I'm just like, no, bitch. Comic Con, that
I
4,000
see your
people showed up
1,500 followers,
for.
and I raise you a comic convention
Yes.
featuring the female industry best and brightest.
Yes, not to include all the people that watch my movies online or whatever. Like, everybody doesn't have to follow you. It's just like
Yeah.
people will come and they'll have an email newsletter or whatever. Like, people will come if you build it, and so that's what we're doing. We're building stuff, and people will come and see our stuff. But they want to have some kind of way to have some control over it, so they look at your social media numbers like that means anything.
Because people need to find some simplistic and, dare I say it, gauche way
Mhm.
of disseminating information in a way that their lizard brain can understand.
Yes, that's exactly what that is. And it's just like it needs to stop. I mean, especially in Hollywood, it's just like they want you to have heat, or they want you to have an already built-in following. Like, I met with a company yesterday, and he was just talking about, a lot of them are looking for established properties. So they're looking for things that are like, already have a following, have already been made before, kind of reboots type of thing, or, properties that maybe Marvel has that they haven't explored yet, or other comic book companies have that haven't explored yet. So I'm like, well, I'm here with a franchise, which is what my script is, that is new, is innovative, it's American, it's an action adventure set in America, which is usually not happening, and it's a lot of fun. That's what everybody talks about, is how fun my script is or whatever. But it's just like, it's not. No, I haven't done books for it yet to have it go out and sell 1 million copies or anything like that. But if that's what you want, I can go do that. But then your price is going to be a lot more expensive when you come back to me. So
I
you want to
mean,
get it now? You want to get it later? What are we doing here?
Your books are probably on the same level of popularity as the original Guardians of the Galaxy comic books.
Right.
No one was reading those. They were very obscure, and it's only because...
Mhm.
And James Gunn said, I don't care, I'm a fucking talking tree and make a movie out of that. Why not? I did Slither. Who cares? Did he do Slither? I don't know. I keep him confusing with
I'll have to
Tremors.
look it up.
Anyway, and it's yeah. The big thing that gets me to the video game industry, because like you can have these amazing voice actors and motion capture artists who work on these video games that make billions upon billions of dollars that far outclips even the biggest summer blockbusters.
Yeah.
And they can't get spat on if they're on fire in a Hollywood studio. It's insane.
Well, that's
and
what I've
it's
discovered.
short-sighted.
That's what I've discovered since I've kind of been in these meetings and talking with a lot of different people, is that they understand Marvel, they understand DC, but I'm not sure that they understand the comic book world at all. I've seen, like, at Comic Cons, like, you would think at Comic Cons is where like a lot of the exec producers or whoever would come to kind of seek out new talent, because I don't think they realize how
Let's
hard it
observe the
is.
wallets.
Yeah, I don't think they realize how hard it is to do a comic alone, just like one. So it's like if someone gets through doing one comic, you should probably look at that and see because there's a lot that goes into that. Or whatever. That's like that's the best prequels, like the origin storytelling that you're gonna get. And it's just like so. I've only seen maybe like once or twice. I've been approached by like producers and like real producers or whatever who are smart enough to come and look at Comic Cons to see what's out there and what types of stories are being created from scratch before they reach the image or reach the Marvel level or of success or whatever. It's like this is where the rubber meets the road.
Because there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of hot, fresh IPs for studios to grab while they're still affordable that
Yeah.
could be turned into billion-dollar franchises, and
Yeah.
they don't give a shit.
Yeah, I don't think they understand it. I think they understand the profits that come in from Marvel and all their movies. I don't think they understand just how the comic book world works or just kind of how to go out and find and seek that talent out.
I'll never forget. I saw this on Twitter recently, but I could never forget when I first saw it. Way back in, I think it was 2009 or something. We're talking about Marvel. That Variety, I think it was, did an article on how Marvel rolls the dice in hiring Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston, a relative unknowns, as Thor and Loki. And it's just like, oh, the short-sightedness of it all. Because they had established acting credits. They thought that they had done nothing. It's not like they were fresh out of drama school. Chris Hemsworth had been in Star Trek. He'd been in a long-running Australian TV series. I think it was Home and Away or something. It was a soap opera. Tom Hiddleston, presumably I'm not familiar with, but had done stuff over here in the UK.
Right.
And it was just a question of Marvel and Kenneth Branagh, I guess, just looked at them and said, they've got the look, they've got the acting chops, they've got the acting ability.
Right.
Let's cast them on. And they acted like they were complete unknowns. And it's just like, maybe you don't know what you're talking about. Maybe this way of making movies that you've been doing sort of in various ways for the last 100 years is no longer relevant with YouTube and Instagram and graphic novels and, independent films and press and all these sorts of things.
And TikTok. I mean, everybody's really at this point with TikTok and like the other, like Instagram, whatever, they're entertaining themselves. That's what's happening. Things have gotten so where it's just like the movies are coming out. I think they're not escape enough for them. So people are just dancing for each other and entertaining themselves and following each other. And that's what's happening. And so a lot of what's happening is a lot of Hollywood is trying to go now capture those people as personalities and bring them into movies and stuff or whatever. So it's just like, okay, like what?
Let's hire the guys from Smosh.
Yeah, why not? They have followers. They have 1 million followers. So that's going to translate over into this movie, which a lot of times I don't think it does. No. So it's like they're getting taught that lesson. But yeah, it's very weird how it all goes down. And I'm kind of in the middle of it all at this point with like, because I'm
off to the side with a bucket of popcorn, just like, okay, let's watch it all
it's entertaining. It's entertaining. It's definitely entertaining. When you're in it, though, it's not that entertaining. It's just like, okay, but what are you doing?
That's the thing. So you have the opportunity, and granted, you're at, the mercy of certain studios and producers and things like that, but you're an opportunity to change things for the better. The work you're doing is changing things for the better.
But it's a fight, though. It's a fight to like to and that's the thing I've been talking about. That like we want to see happy movies. I pay attention to what the people are saying out here. So when you see them talking on Twitter, that's your customer base. So are you going to listen to your customer base? Or are you going to continue? Because that's what I learned at Coca-Cola. You figure out what your customers want and you give them a good product and they will support and buy it from you for 100 years. And so it's like, I don't understand, like I said, like, I don't know if DC's execs are listening to the fans because the fans are telling them what they want and then they're doing the like complete opposite of it. And it's just like, okay, like, what is that about? I don't know.
On the one hand, you don't want to, if you're a creator, you don't want to be at the mercy of what the fans want necessarily.
Right.
But at the same time, there is a middle ground. There's a reasonable middle ground to be had between let's ignore what people want and just do fucking whatever just based on tradition, which, as we all know, is peer pressure from dead people. And just saying, oh, you want this or now you want this. I mean, we have seen the extreme of that with Star Wars, the sequel trilogy, just again, pinballing between all these different ideas based on fan reactions, in which you just needed to take a step back and just say, okay, maybe let's just focus on making a good story. But here's the thing, Star Wars is an already established thing. It has an audience. It already has... It's fine. Star Wars is not fragile. What we need to do is bring up all these stories that are fragile, that are new, that need defenders, and that need boosters, and fucking boost them, because otherwise...
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
On that note, I think we're going to end the show. Links will be in the show notes. Shequeta, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. This is awesome.
I'm so glad you had a good time. And if you enjoy the show, Capers, please tell your friends. Shout it from the rooftops! And if you haven't already, go back and listen to some of our other super episodes. Like previously, we were talking with other comic creators and all sorts. So you go and check those episodes out. You can listen to the show on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, or at podcapers.com. If you want to get in touch with us, suggest show topics, or maybe come on the show yourself, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at AP2HYC. Thank you very much to Dan Harris for our logo, the lovely microphone, the red and blue 3D glasses, those are mine. And thank you for listening. This has been Podcapers, the official podcast of a place to hang your cape. Cue the music!